I said I was going to read outside my comfort zone, and I did. Before I really go any further, I have to say this is probably going to be a not safe for work video. I read 6 stories by a pairing of authors. 2 of them are dinosaur erotica. One is gargoyle erotica. One is orc erotica. One is dragon erotica. And one is naga erotica. And if you don't know what naga erotica is, or what naga are, it's I think like a mermaid or a merman, except instead of a lower half being like a fish, it's like a snake. Yeah, so if you're thinking, maybe I'm not old enough to watch this video, or maybe I shouldn't watch this video at work, or maybe this is not going to be something I'm interested in seeing, yeah, then you should either not watch this, or you should save this video for later when you're not going to be in danger of having to answer awkward emails or questions. So there's your warning. So I did this search. Just try and find, just try and broaden my horizons, right? I wanted to read outside my comfort zone, so I'm thinking, okay, I was reading romance, between January 15th or so, I think I started, and hopefully be done before February 14th, but before Valentine's Day, hopefully have read a bunch of this stuff. And so I found some short stuff to read, and the way I found it was I said, well, what is the best weird erotica out there? One of the things that came up is something a genre I've known about for a long time, is dinosaur erotica. And I thought, okay, well, find me some good stuff. What's actually good? What isn't just junk? A pairing of writers who seem to come up quite a bit in some of those searches were Christie Sims and Alara Branwen. I hope I got her name right. And one of them that got mentioned was Taken by the Pterodactyl. So I read Taken by the Pterodactyl, and after I read that, I thought, okay, and I was able to get a number of those, about 6 of these 2 writers. They wrote a bunch of this stuff together. At least I think they've written all of them together. There's one of them I'm not certain about. So 6 of those works. They're all really short. I think I was able to read them maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I mean, the Kindle was saying like 16 pages or something like that. They were there was a story to all of them. So that's the preface. That's the overview, right? That's how I came to find these. I read some other stuff too that came from those lists. This was just this selection of 6 seemed like I needed to talk about these together. So here we are. Let's take the first one, Taken by the Pterodactyl. The main character here is sort of like does some like sheep herding. She's sort of herding sheep, and she gets taken by the pterodactyl. It sounds so silly to talk about, and I know when I first heard about this stuff, I just thought, man, is this real? And then you kind of look it up, and you're like, it is. There's a lot of this, and so it was kind of like with a laugh that I started these, and they don't try to be funny. I mean, there's nothing in any of these stories that's like trying to be over the top, ridiculous, or crazy. I think there's an effort to make it plausible. So I didn't approach it comically, and I also tried to approach it with a sense of, this is somebody who spent time on this and worked on this, and I'm trying to appreciate them as though I was a fan of the genre and approaching it in that sense. And so in that sense, they're fun. Apart from maybe one of them feeling kind of like not very sexy, because it didn't feel entirely consensual or something. I'll get to that in a second, but that specific story, that was the gargoyle one. Apart from that one, there was I don't know. I mean, it was kind of like this thing happened, and in the moment of it, it was a choice made by 2 consenting entities. I almost said adults, and I thought, well, that's not. You can't describe a pterodactyl as an adult pterodactyl, I suppose. So maybe it is 2 consenting adults. It was fun. It was fun. I mean, I don't know what to say. It was fun. I'm not saying that it was like. I'm not saying that I was like, wow, I got to read a lot of this stuff now. But, for what it was trying to do, right? I think it did it well. I think the writing was good. There was a plausible story. It was not. There was some build up, right? There's a little bit of story to kind of set the scene and kind of get things going. So that one of all of them was probably not the most graphic of them. And by that I mean the most extreme things happening. I don't think it was that, but it was, and also this isn't, we don't talk about vagaries here, right? It wasn't, they don't sort of beat around the bush, so to speak. They go into the bush, if you will. And, so there's some pretty vivid descriptions there, but it wasn't to the point of, it still stayed, and that's an important thing to mention too, it still stayed erotica. It didn't really ever leave erotica and enter the P zone. And what I mean by that is when it becomes only about the act itself, and that's all that we're talking about. That's all that's about it, and it's just becomes sort of lewd. None of these are that, and so they never left being erotica. This particular one was graphic, but not the most graphic. It wasn't too fetishy. It wasn't too heavy into that. I mean, I guess you could say any dinosaur erotica is fetishy, right? Okay. But that said, it didn't really sort of wallow in that. One of the stories I felt kind of did, but it wasn't this one. So I think for all of them, that if you were interested in these stories, Taken by the Pterodactyl is a good one to start with. Again, you're only really committing maybe 10 or 15 minutes of your time physically reading it. So if you wanted to try one of these, I think that was the one that was initially recommended. And I'd say of them, I think it's probably the most accessible. Yeah, accessible. It's the most accessible of these, monster erotica stories by these writers that I read. So, yeah, if you want to see, then that's an easy, quick way to see whether this is going to be something that you could be entertained by and sort of have fun with, or whether it's just too much and you don't like it, or you just think or you don't understand it and don't get into it. And I kind of have that feeling a little bit, but it was fun. The next story is Taken by T-Rex, or Taken by the T-Rex. This one was interesting. There was a lot more developed for the story there. The female lead, this one is set in prehistoric times, whereas the Taken by Pterodactyl is sort of set in sort of a almost like a pseudo futuristic time. Like I think that the main character is on another planet or something. I don't think the presence of the dinosaurs is ever explained, but they do a good job of just sort of giving you enough of this setting in all these stories, actually, just enough of the setting that it doesn't feel too contrived, but that it also doesn't spend a lot of time doing world building for a story that you're probably not reading for the dinosaur factoids. Taken by the T-Rex is a prehistoric setting where humans and dinosaurs live in the same time period. So that one was interesting. There's sort of like a T-Rex attack on a village, and then the female lead there, is a very good hunter, and she wants to, she's kind of arguing her case about we need to strike back at this T-Rex. We can't let it, we have to defend ourselves, right? That one was a strange thing. It was kind of, it was like I was a little surprised at what we got. I almost want to say, when I was telling my wife about this one in particular, I told her I told her a little about it. I said, it's kind of surprising. And then I realized that maybe what happened was almost like a bit of a pun. So I don't know. I don't really want to give it away, but, so because this is not a very long story, and I feel like that's sort of that's the reason that you're reading that story is what happens, right? So I don't want to give that part away. There's not a lot of the story, so even the little spoiler could be too much. But I thought that was kind of, when I thought about it later, I thought, was it an intentional joke? I don't know if it was. It kind of could be. Pretty graphic. Definitely more graphic than the last one, I think. I think that more so than the pterodactyl one, that there was a little more consensual. It's definitely felt like it was a choice that the female lead made to be with this T-Rex. And, I think that one had a little bit more, the story had a little more structure, right? I think they took a little more time with that. I'm talking about the story here on this, I know, but I think there was a little more care given to that story. And, I don't know, I guess I could say I liked it. It was also, just seemed strange, especially since I guess another thing I think when I'm reading these, I'm like, so I don't know anything about Christie Sims or Alara Branwen. I don't know anything about them other than what their little writer blurbs give us, which wasn't much. Neither one of them has a picture that I think is them. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I don't believe so. So I don't really know anything about them objectively, and it makes me wonder who are the people who are actually reading these stories, and I don't know. I mean, I know that I'm reading them sort of as like a one-off, isn't as humorous, but I wonder like who are the repeat customers, and so I'm not certain. It makes me wonder, because of the things that happen in some of these stories, who are we writing these stories for? Are these stories written for men or women? I kind of think they're written for men. I kind of do. I mean, they could be written for women. I'm not saying they couldn't be. I guess they could be either one. It makes me, especially this one, made me think, is this, maybe it is. I mean, what do I know? I just thought, interesting. So anyways, Taking by the T-Rex, I thought that one was good too. If I was going to say something about that one, I think that one was also pretty accessible. It's a lot more violent than maybe any of the other ones. I think there's more gore, I guess, which is not a common thing, and it doesn't ever get super gross or graphic in that sense, I don't think. But it's there, just so you know. I mean, I don't think that's going to be. I mean, if you're at the point where you're reading dinosaur erotica, are you worried too much about a little bit of blood? I think that would be kind of an unusual way to approach this stuff. But just so you know. The next one was Sins of the Flesh, and this is follows a nun who is having difficulty when some monks. And it's hard to understand what time period this story is supposed to take place in. And so this nun who is becoming frustrated because now there's some monks who come to their church sometimes, and she feels that they're distracting her. She starts to explore herself in her private time, and then at some point, as the story very clearly says in its blurb and in the title, has an encounter with a gargoyle. This story of all of them was the most complete story. It felt like a story that you would almost read in a short story collection. Almost like if somebody had a collection of short erotica stories, this might be in there, because it felt like it had like the pacing was there. Like there was different. There was like a. It had like a sort of like I don't want to say a twist ending, but it had something at the end that kind of put a little punctuation on the end of it instead of just sort of stopping. I was kind of most interested in that story when I read the title. So I was like, oh man, I gotta read this one. This just sounds crazy. It was not very sexy, specifically because it wasn't that it was not consensual at all. She got into it, but it was sort of like not altogether something that she was enjoying. It felt a little bit more like something she was enduring, and maybe that's the appeal of that story. Maybe that's a kink that is being played to. Without giving away very much. It didn't feel. It wasn't that it was like gross or not sexy at all. It was that I think just it didn't sound very mutually pleasurable. Like I thought this would be a lot more fun and silly and say, oh my gosh, this one. It was also maybe the least with a sense of like, it left with a sense like, So if those two sounds make sense to you, thank you. That's how I communicate. Yeah. And if you'd like to hear me make more sounds, you can always watch other crap that I do. Oh, jeez. Sorry for the insert. Let's move on. The next is Taming the Dragon, which was Dragon Erotica. I made some little notes here, so just kind of looking at my notes. Yeah, that's what I thought. It had like this sort of like a fantasy world building here. Like weird choices were made to sort of explain this, and maybe a little, I don't know. It was strange. It was weird. People's reactions to, this sort of like, reactions to what I think would probably be like, what? There's a rogue dragon, and only women can tame dragons and control dragons, and the reason and the way that they do that is by having sex with them. I mean, this is Dragon Erotica, right? Okay, so that's how you tame a dragon, is yeah. I don't even know. You don't really have to turn the lights down low. Of all of them, it was the most female forward, right? Like, this woman was making a conscious choice. She was excited about this encounter and this story. And that made for what was, I think, the most graphic of all of them. Yeah, it was. And then it was like, so after, so it was pretty graphic, obviously, like I said. And then in addition to that, after it was over, after the, in the post-coital, I guess you could say, some things or a thing happened that I kind of was like, is that a thing that people, because there was some time spent on it. So I'm like, okay, we're playing into something here, right? This is part of the fantasy. Is that a thing that people, okay, what do I know? Cool. I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me. I just didn't, I feel a little silly. I didn't know, or I didn't think that was, it's not that I didn't know. It's that I was a little, okay, that's what we get. I apologize for being vague. I don't, the most important thing I think here is that I don't want to describe too much what happened, because I think that what they're doing is fun and entertaining, and they're not asking a lot from anyone who wants to enjoy their product. So I don't want to rob them of it. In fact, before we finish, I'm not even done yet, but I just want to say that I think these were fun, and I think that if you're thinking about it, if you're kind of like curious, well, try it out. I mean, they're not asking a whole lot, and if nothing else, you will have something very funny to tell someone who you can talk about these things with, and they will be very entertained by your stories. So you can at least have that, right? That's I would say it's water cooler talk, but I don't know if that would be. I don't know that that's something you should do. You have to judge for yourself whether you'll get. Have to answer those emails, right? So be careful. But anyways, but the Taming the Dragon one was definitely the most graphic. Definitely, I was a little surprised by. I was like, okay, we're going here. This is what we're doing. Sure, okay. You know what? I was along for the ride. I just went all the way. It was fine. It was entertaining. And there was definitely, it felt like, I think that might be a series too. I think a couple of these are actually like a series. So I wonder if that main character in that story goes on to do more dragons. I wonder. It would be interesting to see that develop. Yeah, it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see that develop. I'm going to say it. I'm going to have to look after this. I'll have to look into it. The next was A Debt of Gratitude, which is a orc erotica. That one felt most like a the fact that the character's an orc could have almost been sort of sidelined, or he could have been anyone in a medieval setting, right? He didn't have to be an orc. One of the few who had like a speaking part, and that the characters interacted a lot. That felt a lot less like just a random encounter. That's funny. More like a romance, sort of a mutually pleasing one-night stand, so to speak. So I thought that was the most romantic of all of the stories. Also less graphic. So if you were real unsure about the other ones, then that particular one might be might be the one to try. A Debt of Gratitude is what that one's called. And, I kind of also read that to sort of compare it to a book I just finished, Lady in New York. And I don't know, I kind of think I preferred this story as a whole to that book. I think I did. But I want to talk about that separately. Not that I think that The Lady in New York was a bad book. Man, I have some things to say about that book, actually. So, A Debt of Gratitude, a fun and kind of more along the lines of a traditional romance. That one would probably be the easiest to approach. And the last was A Serpent's Kiss. This was the other one that I was kind of excited about, because I was kind of looking through their list, and I was like, I want to read 6. So I was kind of looking through their list. I'm like, what's another one I could read? And I'm like, Naga, and I'm like, huh, all right, that sounds interesting. And I'm like, this could be really cool. I said it. I'm not going to edit it out. It was really fetishy. I mean, I found myself in the deep end of the pool, and I wasn't certain that I knew how to swim. That one was interesting. I would say it was the least for me. I did not, it appealed to me the least. I'm not saying it was a bad story. None of these stories are bad. Actually, the writing in all these stories is good, and I think that those erotic encounters are always sexy, I guess. I'm going to use that word because I think that's what I think. I think that they were sexy, and I think that especially since they were all very consensual, and it was like both parties were interested in this, and both parties came away with a good experience. And I think the stories all did what they were supposed to do. And Serpent's Kiss was, it did what it was supposed to do. It was Naga Erotica, and it was graphic in its strangeness, and I think that's part of it. Imagery. I guess with imagery, I don't know that it was. I don't want you to think graphic as in be like, oh, is this like abusive or something? No. Graphic as in the level that the eroticism was pushed to. Kudos to Christie Sims and Alara Branwen that they could write these short erotic stories, and that the writing stayed good throughout them. It was fun to read these. It was a lot of fun to talk to my wife about them and to say, I didn't know that that's what dragons would do. Yeah, if you want to see me get flustered more, you can always subscribe and watch me put myself in awkward situations. I do this of my own free will and consensually. Goodbye.